You seem to be ahead of the curve in identifying the threat of critical race theory within the church.
Yeah.
What would you guess is the next wave?
I personally believe that the end of critical race theory in the church, intersectionality, is deconstruction. And I think we're in that now.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that we saw these things in the church, and this is the answer I give to people, so you should know, babe, is...
Well, maybe he knew your answer was so good that he was like, you
Oh.
definitely have to ask this.
So the reason that we saw intersectionality, I think before, I was explaining to my dad what it was years before he actually had to deal with it in the areas that he works in.
Yeah.
Is because it's a social contagion. It's a social phenomena, which means it takes root in the women's groups first.
It does.
Because it's a social phenomena.
That's what happens.
Because we were busy in women's groups. That's why we saw it first. And what I can tell you now, without naming names, is that I can think of a handful of women that I personally knew, Christians. They were the ones that I saw talking about intersectionality, intersections. I can think of a handful of them that would no longer claim to be Christians. Right. I could think of another handful of them that were on the same page as me, very conservative leaning. They would now say they're progressive Christians. And so I think intersectionality, CRT, all of that ultimately leads to deconstruction. That's the point. So if you look at what the whole point of those systems is meant to deconstruct, and that is where they've all ended up.
It's like an exposure wave, a reveal, like it's very revelatory, like, but in a good way, because it really, you can look around and much more clearly see, like after, I would say, decades of everyone kind of being a Christian, it's like, well, but how do we, like, how can you actually be a Christian? How can you actually preach the gospel if everyone's just a Christian in name,
right?
But really they just believe what they personally feel like works best or sounds good or placates to their cowardice or whatever.
Yeah.
But you definitely start to see like the stakes get higher, and that might seem a little scary, and like the deconstruction might seem a little scary, but what it's actually doing is it's
revealing.
Right. It's just revealing who actually isn't a believer. It's firming up our faith, firming up what we believe to be true.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a blessing in apostasy because it's a cleaning out. It's a cleaning house.
Yeah.
And I do think that in a way, CRT and intersectionality was a house clean.
Oh yeah.
And it is good to know who's on your team. And I think, a lot of times what you hear from the deconstructionists is, that's what they do. It's so closed. It's so exclusive and, only certain kinds of people. And it's like, well, as far as I'm concerned, there's only two kinds of people in the world, believers and non-believers.
Right.
Jesus said, if you're with me, you're with me. If you're not with me, you're against me.
Right.
If you're for Jesus, then I'm for you. We're on the same team. Yep. Either God is your father or he's your enemy. And that really does separate us. But yeah, what's next? I mean, the split is next. And we're going to have more people asking questions like the first one. And, what do I do if I'm going to lose my job? What do I do in these situations? And I think, times like that really do show us who our friends are.
Well, yeah, that's the type of situation where praise God for that firming up.
Yeah.
Like if you can be firmed up 5 years before everything happens and collapses or, the big earthquake, like, praise God. Yeah. Praise God for that. And we will need our strength. And I know there's obviously debate about how much strength we'll need and whether it'll be, there'll be like how deep things will go.
Yeah.
but even, you know, just economically,
Yeah.
socially, politically, all that. But
so what's next? Apostasy and then the strengthening. And that's a very post-mill outlook for you.